to me, it's like this guy was consistently in reinventing himself, and like you as an artist, never letting the grass grow beneath your feet for too long before moving on. Did you was there any? Did you ever have any? Can you talk about Stan's personality, where it could catch you off guard, where he could be very sweet, but also he could be also acerbic, and obviously some of that had it to do with substance abuse.
Well, yes, I think Stan's, first of all, just addressing his, continual development. I mean, when I joined the band, of course, people were still wanting to hear the hits that he'd had with "Go for Me, Panema," and that can be a burden for an artist. I know Miles had the same thing. People wanted him to just keep playing around midnight, but you want to move on as an artist. I think you don't want to just keep revisiting that song as much as people might have loved it, And so Stan was constantly looking for new material, and he had a very fiery. I felt, that the period I was playing with him, he was really playing with a lot of fire and a lot of energy, and that was very satisfying to be around.
Can you talk about his? I mean, there are. What I'm trying to get at is what's going to make this film really breathe is that the complexity of this individual. He was, for lack of a better term, very Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, were you privy to that?
Not really. No, he was. He treated me with a lot of, very well. I was living upstate when I was with him, and he was living in his house down by the Tappan Zee Bridge in Tarrytown. Beautiful house that he was living in, and he invited my wife and my at the time 2 small children down there. It was a beautiful mansion with grounds and tennis courts, and it was a fantasy house. And we
wait, was this the Gershwin mansion in Irvington?
Yes, it was the mansion that Gershwin bought for his sister.
36 rooms. Yeah, it was.
And there was a beautiful music room with a circular music room with a domed ceiling and a white piano in the middle. I used to go in there and write music when I was there. And there was a conservatory, and the grounds were planted with beautiful flowers from all over the world, and my wife was very, very much into horticulture and gardening and so on, and it was just wonderful. And he was very gracious, and Monica, his wife, she and my wife became good friends, and we had a wonderful time there. We visited several times, spent the weekend there, and I have to say my experience with Stan was very positive.
I mean, listen, you are the, many, many musicians have said that, he treated me great, but I heard all the stories, and the classic line about Zoot Sims saying Stan was a nice bunch of guys. And, can you talk about, like there's a live album out from 75 from the Left Bank. Can you talk about like a memory?
Yeah, that's unauthorized, by the way, at least by us.
Yeah, I mean, listen, don't hold it against. I'm just looking at it here. It's my foolish.
I'm glad it's out because it's the only recorded thing I think that's available.
Can you talk about, how you can play these tunes? Like you said, they wanted Miles. The crowd wanted him to play around midnight, and they wanted Stan to play his pop hits. How did you coming from Circle and from Miles, much more abstract music with form, but also very free, how you were able to keep yourself engaged, and if in fact you could point to a time when the music you all transcended on the bandstand together?
Well, I mean. Even though I was still quite young then, what was I, 25 or something when I was playing with Stan, 26. my coming up through, my apprenticeship and everything was playing all kinds of music and different styles of jazz, and from traditional New Orleans style to swing, bebop, what is called free jazz, open form playing. I'm just interested in playing music, and as a bass player, I wanted to be able to contribute to whatever situation I was in. So, playing with Stan gave me an opportunity to go into that world that he was functioning in musically, and to work on that aspect of the language and to develop. I had a lot to learn still. There was still, and still do. So, I saw it as an opportunity to work on that approach to music, and I came away from it having learned a lot. Learned how to be a better accompanist. But that's an ongoing thing. I'm not saying that I was learning that before I was with Stan, but again, going into that world that he was functioning in musically was an opportunity for me to learn some more about that approach to the music. And I was listening to recordings that were representative of that, so to get inspiration and to develop my approach to it some more. And that's just the way I like to approach music. It still is. If I'm going to a musical situation, I want to find out what it is I can do with it, what I can learn from it, and what I can contribute as a part of it.
What has been like an inspiring learning experience for you in 2016?
This year?
Yeah.
Well, playing with Zakir Hussain.
That's not a maiden voyage. I mean, you've done that before, right?
Well, I played with him only in context with Herbie Hancock and in a larger group. So this was a more intimate setting. Zakir did some gigs this was actually the end of last year.
What was it? And tell me, can you break it down from a technical and spiritual point of view? Why it was inspiring?
Well, first of all, Zakir is a master musician. I mean, he's an absolute, I can't even find words to explain what he
I
can
know.
do.
I interviewed Zakir. First of all, he's also a beautiful person too. On top
a beautiful person, yeah. And this project, he brought together a couple of his friends from India that were jazz players, and he invited Chris Potter and myself and Eric Holland, and Vinny Colaiuta was a part of that.
Wow.
We did 4 nights with different guests at the San Francisco Jazz Center, and then I went on to do a series of concerts with Zakir and the 2 Indian musicians and Chris Potter, and it was just a great opportunity to play with a master, So that's one thing, and then this group I mentioned right at the beginning of the interview, Aziza with Lionel Lueke and Chris Potter and Eric. That's very inspiring, and everybody's written some really good compositions that we're playing, and it's a lot of fun. We're going to be touring with the band later this year.
How do you, with tablas, how do you find room when I listen to Mahapurush Mishra or even Zakir or other bands that had tabla players? They might have had like an electric bass, but I mean, how do you incorporate the upright bass into raga music in your own way?
It's just music. I mean, I just play the bass and make some music.
But I mean, this was a new experience, right? I mean, you said it was inspiring, so I'm just I assume from a musical point of view, it stretched you out in some way.
Yeah, well, Zakir, has an incredibly sophisticated rhythmic concept that comes out of the Indian tradition of classical Indian music, but which he's developed, of course, himself. and his own approach to it, and it's just the interaction, the dialogue that happens on stage is very inspiring and pushes you to to do things that you maybe wouldn't have thought of if you hadn't been inspired by what he's playing.
And then do you have a tendency to ever, when something like that occurs, have you listened back to the music at all since then?
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes record gigs so I can listen back to what was happening and get a perspective, because at the time things are going by fast. You don't have time to consider. So yeah, and there was I saw some things on YouTube, I think, that some people had recorded and so on.
A couple things. I talked to Dave Liebman over the weekend, and he was channeling, again, he played the saxophone, and he was really on this trip, this John Coltrane trip, and was very clear about the fact that he just was not mature enough to dig Stan's bossa music. He thought it was cute and sleepy at the time, and he was definitely channeling this burning Coltrane kind of music. And he said that there was this sort of this sort of zeitgeist to a degree. That might be the wrong word, but it was like Coltrane was playing real jazz. Stan was the beautiful cat who was the hit maker. Not that Stan couldn't play, obviously, but that it was that. I guess here's the point, and I want to know it from you as a musician, that if you made a hit, there must be something wrong in jazz. I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
What, if you sell records, is something wrong?
No, I mean,
I don't think so. I think, I mean, to me, it's, there's been a lot of hits records in the past, I mean, Louis Armstrong had hits, Duke Ellington had hits. Didn't make them any less of a musician. Sometimes you make a record and it grabs people's attention. It touches them in a certain way. I think that the music that Stan made in the early 60s and the bossa nova music, deeply affected people, just like Sketches of Spain did. It was a music that created a mood in your house, and that opened up a new world for people, maybe in their imagination. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, but
and
I
think I think that again, this thing of pitting one musician or comparing one with another. Well, Train did this and Stan did that, and I don't really buy into that way of thinking. I think, I celebrate the differences. I like the fact that we have a Stan Getz and a John Coltrane. I think this makes the music better.
Absolutely.
I think variety is wonderful. I think that the idea that jazz has to be narrowed down into, this is jazz and this isn't kind of thing, I just don't see the point in that. I think it's inhibiting, and it's against what the whole spirit of the music's about, which is be yourself, play it, do it your way. If you want to spend your life playing beautiful ballads, great. If you want to play, energetic and full tilt music, great. Let's do it. Let's see what you got. I mean, to me, it's to celebrate the variety of life and the variety of creative thought.
Well, I mean, you should be running, jazz at Lincoln Center. I mean, this is Dave Holland. If everybody had your
no, thank you. I don't want
exactly
to
no. And what I'm
you.
trying to get, I am 38, right? So I pray that I wouldn't have been. I guess what I'm trying to get at is this: in the press in the early '60s, before you came to the States, when Coltrane went off on his own and started to play his kind of music and channeling that inner strength, it was considered. In the white press, it was considered hate music. People used to scream.
Yeah, of course, and they also said that Ornette couldn't play, and they also said Albert Ayler couldn't play, and
exactly. So when it comes to
it's just the I think people have a hard time embracing something that's different, and they get comfortable with something they love, and then something comes along that shows an alternative thing, and not everybody can relate to it maybe, or even accept it as being valid. I mean, even musicians, some of the musicians that were most against the new wave of music that was happening in the late 50s and early 60s with Cecil Taylor and Ornette and John Coltrane, some of the most vocal opponents were musicians.
Really? Because
they felt it challenged all the things that they believed in. Miles, when he went after around the Bitches Brew period, Miles came in for a lot of criticism from musicians, from his peers, that it was anti-jazz, it was going to be the death of jazz and all this kind of stuff, It's just people who, are invested in a particular way of playing, and then something else alternative comes along and challenges that, and I think people have a hard time accepting that sometimes.
Do you now? You're from England, and Europe is, as I just talked to Alex Litcherwood from Jeff Beck and Brian Auger, and you could be on a hillside in France somewhere, they're having a jazz festival, and you're like, who's going to come to that? And all of a sudden 1,500 people show up. There's not nearly as much cultural bias, or some people would call it racism, in Europe. But you're saying when someone comes along with a new concept in music, it's hard to accept. Is it that, or was it the fact that the cats that you mentioned were African American? I mean, the point is that Stan was a hit maker. He was.
Can you hold on a second, Jake?
Sure.
I'll be right with you.
No problem.
Yep. On the phone.
Talking to Dave Holland here, an amazing bass player, very enlightened cat, and breaking Stan Getz down here, among other things. Dave continues a prolific career.
Sorry about that. I had somebody at the door.
No. I know what I'm getting at is you said you pointed again. You're from England. You don't have these hang-ups. You're not dealing with the original sin of slavery in this country. You say.
When did I say that?
No. What I'm getting at is you said it was the concept that bothered people, but the cats that were creating the new concepts were black. And what I'm trying to get at is, was Stan accepted more because he was a hit maker, beautiful, and white? That's it.
Accepted where?
Amongst the idea of saying what Liebman was talking about, where that Stan was not as taken as seriously in music because he made hits. Therefore, there must be something wrong with you because Dizzy, Miles, those cats. They made decent livings. They weren't millionaires. They should have been, but they were black. And the new forms of music were black music, because jazz is a black American art form. And so I'm just trying to get at the idea of saying, is it the new concepts or the people who are making the new concepts that make people uncomfortable?
I don't know how to answer that, honestly. I guess I don't think. Can you generalize about a question like that?
Well, I guess
what makes people uncomfortable could be a variety of things. I think what my take on it was that that a lot of it was to do with just a new approach to music that people weren't used to, and that were feeling unfamiliar with, and that was the thing. Were the people do racist attitudes come in? Of course they do, and that's been part of the history of the music too. And were African Americans discriminated against and given a harder time? Sometimes they often relied on white business people to give them a foot into the business,
right.
Without representation by a white agent or something like that, they couldn't function. Duke had to work with Mills, Irving Mills. Mills has got his name on the compositions.
Right.
He never wrote a note of music. But you look at some of the compositions from the early days of Duke, and it's Duke Ellington and Irving Mills. He had nothing to do with writing that music. So, I mean, this is a whole other subject. I mean, but as far as the concept of the music, I can't say that it was only down to racial reasons that people had a hard time accepting what Ornette and Train were doing. I think it was also to do with it challenged the norm, musically.
Absolutely. And to be fair, to step back, Stan hated the fact that he was colorblind. I mean, he went to South Africa when there was fierce apartheid, and he showed up assuming he'd played for mixed audiences, and the promoter said no. So he might have played that concert, but he wound up at a gymnasium in Johannesburg somewhere, and was and with his quartet, and then with local musicians and cats like Dizzy and Miles. I'm curious, did Miles? I mean, I know those cats respected him. Did Miles ever talk about Stan to you?
I don't remember having a specific conversation with him about him. No.
The question I have is, you were playing a lot of standards and classic Stan Getz tunes. Can you talk about what?
Jake, I have to tell you that I've talked to you for about 45 minutes, and I'm very happy to. But I don't know how much longer do you need to talk to me about?
5 minutes.
Okay, very good.
We're not going for 2 hours. Don't worry.
Okay, it's just I got other things I got to do today.
I appreciate you taking the time. One final question. Can you talk in your mind about the qualities of Stan that impressed you, because the tunes you were writing for him when you joined his band were not things he was necessarily in his traditionally what he was playing. So how quickly did he figure them out, and what
Stan was an amazing musician. He had incredible instincts and ear for the music. He could hear a piece of music and very quickly, start playing on it right away. I mean, and being creative with it. He, if you look at his history and his experience as a player, he came up through a time when, the training and the musicianship requirements that you had to play in bands were extremely high, but Stan had just really he had a great ear for the music, and picked up a song very quickly, I tried to write music that would be within a zone that he would be comfortable with, but at the same time, there were chord changes that he had to learn, and he learned them very quickly and started playing them. I didn't see him having any problem at all with it.
Can you just before I let you go, just point me to a couple of tunes that you guys did that you wrote for him?
Yeah, I recorded them later on with other people because they never got recorded with Stan. One's called The Oracle.
Wow.
And
they never got. I mean, with you in the band, they never were recorded on record.
Not by Stan, no.
Yeah, wow, interesting.
I recorded a couple of things with Hank Jones later. One's called Jacob's Ladder.
And that, wow.
Yeah, and there was about half a dozen tunes altogether.
When was the last time you saw Stan? Before he died?
Just before he died.
In Malibu, or what?
No, it was in Boston, actually. I did a concert with him up there.
And do you anything that stands out from that time? Just the fact that he was obviously in a different phase of his life, looking at his mortality. He was not in great health.
Yeah, he seemed to at least to me, we talked a little bit about everything he was going through, and he seemed to have accepted it and was, fighting the good fight, and he still had a sense of humor, and he seemed to be in good spirits, I thought. I mean, he didn't come across as being depressed or sorry for himself or anything like that,
Sure. Well, listen, Dave, it's always good to talk to you, man. Go about your day, and I hope I can come up and do some video with you down the road.
All right. Well, good luck with the documentary. And right now, what all this is being just put into some material.
Yeah. Well,
for
I mean,
quotes and things like that?
yeah. I mean, I'll we're basically going to go to some investors with a sizzle reel, putting together a sizzle reel, and at least get some money to start. I have no doubt that this thing is going to take off, and I'll keep you abreast if any of the stuff we use today. I'll send Nikki a full copy of this, but if anything that is going to go into it, I'll let you know in advance.
Okay.
All right.
Well, good luck with it, Jake.
Good to hear you, Dave. Talk to you soon.
Hope to make it to Arizona sometime.
All right. Yeah. Good. I hope so too.
All right.
Later
Take
on,
care,
man. All right.
Bye.
We'll continue on with Power Talk Live right now.
My humble upbringing in West Philadelphia, born and raised. Thank you. On the playground is where I spend most of my days. So, to those who say I stole my speech, I say, give me a break. Give me